Is the SEC about to leave the NCAA? We've got some wild rumors to get into on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns. Intro.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You're locked on to the Texas Longhorns. I'm your host, BK Brad Kellner, Texas grad, Austin native, and longtime sports radio host here in the Lone Star State. Thank you for making Locked On Longhorns a part of your day every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and tell your Longhorn friends about Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We've got some sound from Steve Sarkisian, who is at SEC meetings in Destin, Florida. We'll let you hear from the head coach talking about the future of the college football playoff and a couple of other pressing issues facing the Texas Longhorns. But first, we've got to talk about this. Yesterday, Ross Dellenger of Yahoo Sports dropped a lengthy article about some of the biggest questions facing all of college football. And in that piece, Dellenger added an interesting report on something that happened back in March. According to Ross Dellenger, a couple of months ago, SEC presidents voted to grant SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey the power to split the SEC away from the NCAA if Sankey believes that that is the right move for the conference. Now, there doesn't appear to be any current momentum towards that actually happening, but this move is still pretty significant. The university presidents have given Greg Sankey the power to leave the NCAA. So if Sankey decides that the NC2A is no longer good for the league, he'll say, we're leaving, and all 16 member institutions will be following. So all of the red tape or all of the things that you normally would have to go to get the approval to leave and make a decision as big as that, and apparently Sankey's got all the approval that he needs right now. So what does this mean? Well, what does this show? First of all, it shows that the SEC schools have a ton of faith and confidence in Greg Sankey, and I think they should. Obviously, Texas has only been a part of this league for 1 year, but we've all watched it for years from afar. The SEC has been the best conference in college sports for a long time. They've made the most money. They've had the most success. It's not just in football. It's in pretty much every single sport. Obviously, you add Texas and Oklahoma to the equation. We all kind of knew that that was going to help the conference even more, and that absolutely has been the case. So Greg Sankey has done a tremendous job, even before the additions of Texas and Oklahoma, in turning the SEC into the premier conference in college sports. So, yeah, everybody's got faith in this guy. And look, the job of a conference commissioner is similar to the job of a commissioner in a professional sports league. Like Roger Goodell's job as the NFL commish is to make the 32 owners a bunch of money. He's done a tremendous job at that. So even though a lot of fans disagree with certain things that Goodell has done, because he is making the league so much money, the owners all love him because their pockets are getting lined with more cash. That's the same thing with the SEC. The university presidents, the athletic directors, everybody loves the job that Greg Sankey has done because this league is more powerful and more profitable than ever before. So the trickle-down effect, the money keeps coming to the schools and everybody associated with college athletics right now. So that's why they love him so much. This also shows us again that the SEC doesn't just have a seat at the table when it comes to big-time decisions being made with college sports. The SEC has a seat, and maybe the seat, at the head of the table. We've known this forever. Again, the most powerful conference in college sports. This is just a reminder that, hey, Big 12, hey, ACC, hey, G5, your opinion doesn't matter as much. If you want to decide anything, we are going to have to be a huge part of that decision. Obviously, the Big Ten is on a similar level as the SEC. Those are the two biggest dogs in college sports right now. This is just more affirmation that, anything that happens involving the future of college sports is going to need to be decided on by the SEC and the Big Ten. So why is all of this happening? Why did this vote go down in March? Why is this becoming a national story today? Well, most of it has to do with the future of the college football playoff. We talked about this last week. We know the 2025 CFP is changing a little bit. We're going to straight seeding for this coming season, meaning teams will be slotted 1 through 12, and the top 4 teams in the CFP rankings will be the teams that get the first round buys this coming year, instead of, Boise State and Arizona State getting the first round buys like they got last year just for winning conference championships. So that's a change that's happening, but that's only for 1 year. A lot of these TV rights contracts expire following the conclusion of the 2025 season, which means we're about to have another wave of college football playoff expansion, and we're going to have a lot of changes likely made to the formatting with the college football playoff. Last week, I'm sure most of y'all saw this. The ACC and the Big 12 published a joint press announcement, and Greg Sankey was not a big fan of that. He actually talked about it over the weekend, saying he didn't need lectures about the good of the game. So the SEC and the Big 10 wants a 16-team playoff that includes a 4-4-2-2-1 format, which would give 4 automatic bids to the SEC, 4 automatic bids to the Big 10, 2 to the Big 12, 2 to the ACC, 1 to the G5, and then there would be 3 at-large bids for all of the other schools. So hypothetically, there could be up to 7 teams in a 16-team college football playoff. Obviously, the SEC and the Big 10 want that. You understand why the ACC and the Big 12 don't. If they're getting truth serum, they would understand that the other 2 conferences are a lot better, but the conference commissioners in those leagues have to do what's right for their schools. Obviously, Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti have to do what's right for the schools in their conferences. But that's a big part of this. We don't know what college football playoff expansion looks like. The SEC and the Big 10 want one thing. Every other conference in college football wants another thing. And I think this is kind of a message from the SEC, like, hey, if you guys don't get us what we want, then we can just leave and we're fine without y'all. You guys, no one's going to watch an ACC Big 12 G5 national championship. You're not going to get the money from TV networks and from endorsers like you would get if we were all in this thing together. So y'all better acquiesce to what we're looking for. Otherwise, we'll break off and do our own thing. And I know there are a lot of fans who are in favor of that. I know there are a lot of fans who hate that, and they feel like it's getting rid of the college football that we all grew to know and love. I don't even know what's going to happen in college sports anymore. Nobody does. So much has changed in the last 2 years, 5 years, 10 years that it feels impossible to predict what's going to happen in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. I will say this. I don't want the SEC and the Big 10 to break off and do their own thing. I think that's bad for college sports. I hope they find a way to agree on something that keeps everybody, in the same league, if you will. I don't mean conference when I say that, but I mean under the same umbrella to where everyone's competing for the same national championship. That's what I want in college football. Hopefully that's what happens. I think that's what the majority of fans want as well. But again, this story from Ross Dellenger, and more importantly, the vote that went down a couple of months ago, basically says that, hey, if we don't get what we want, we're going to break off and do our own thing. I mean, this is as simple as Greg Sankey not believing that the other conferences are on the same ground as the SEC from a competition standpoint, right? Again, he's got to protect his schools. He's got to defend Alabama and Ole Miss. Even though they lost 3 games last year, he's got to go out and say, well, if SMU played one of their schedules, what would they have done? If Boise State played one of their schedules, what would they have done? He feels like it's quantifiably more difficult to win games in the SEC than any other conference. And of course, the SEC is trying to figure out if they want to add a 9th SEC game to the football schedule. He's like, oh, we're not going to do that unless we get assurances that a bunch of our teams are going to make it to the college football playoff, because all of you other conferences are playing these crap teams every Saturday, and we're the toughest league in the sport. We're sending more players to the NFL than anybody else. It's a lot tougher to have a better record in this conference than it is in your conference. So we need, again, some assurance that, hey, we're going to get rewarded for playing tougher schedules than ACC, Big 12, Sun Belt, MAC, and so on and so forth. So that's a big part of this thing too. I do wonder if this is sort of the first domino that gets us closer to the SEC Big 10 Super Conference thing. They don't like what's happening. The whole AFC, NFC bit, we will see. I don't know if I mentioned that a couple of minutes ago. If I did, I'm sorry, but that's obviously something to monitor as well. couple of final thoughts here before we wrap this segment up, and then we'll let you hear from Steve Sarkisian about, what he thinks the future of the CFP should look like. I don't think Greg Sankey wants to break away completely from the NCAA, especially in other sports. Like, he doesn't want to not have his schools be a part of March Madness or the men's and women's College World Series or any other NCAA championships. Like, this would not be just a clean breakaway in all sports from the NCAA. But, football is king. We all know that. It's the most popular sport. It's the biggest moneymaker. And right now it feels like we have more questions than answers about the future of this sport. But again, this feels like a message from Greg Sankey. And we'll see what Tony Petitti in the Big Ten has to say as well. Like, do what we say or we're leaving. And again, could the ACC and Big 12 and G5 exist without the SEC and the Big 10 being in the same league as them? Sure. But would anyone outside of fans and alumni of those schools really care about that? The TV money, the advertising dollars, all of the above, especially if the SEC and the Big 10 poach the Miamis and Clemsons and Florida States and, Notre Dame, if they ever join a conference. Like, if all of the big brands that are still out there join the SEC and the Big 10, would anybody really care too much about what's going on in any other league? I don't know. So a message being sent from the SEC, like, y'all better bend the knee a little bit. Otherwise, we'll be out the door. And in the words of Liam Neeson in the movie Taken, good luck. Actually, I don't think he said that. I think the bad guy said that to Liam Neeson when he said he was going to find him and he was going to kill him. Man, all that great segment, and I just threw it away with a misquote there. Sorry about that, Liam. That movie's too good for that. That's on me. All right, we'll take your thoughts. What do you make of the vote that went down back in March? What do you make of Greg Sankey's comments? What do you make of my thoughts? Want to hear from y'all in the comment section below. Crazy times in college sports. There's no doubt about that. Let's let you hear from Steve Sarkisian. He spoke at SEC meetings in Destin earlier today, talked about this, and he talked about a few other topics as well. We'll let you hear from the coach coming up next, right here on Locked On Longhorns. But first, a word for our friends at Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, college baseball postseason tickets. Yeah, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. They are your personal CFO, giving you full control and visibility over all of your finances. This is not just a budgeting app. This is a complete financial command center. So you can track all of your spending, all of your credit cards, all of your investments, everything in one place. You don't need that folder on your phone with 10 different budgeting apps anymore. You just need Monarch Money. It's all in one convenience from your phone or from your computer, so you can track everything you're spending, so you can start actually building wealth instead of just managing your money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com. You're going to get 50% off your first year. It's as simple as that. Head over to their website, monarchmoney.com. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege, and you're going to get half off your first year from our friends at Monarch Money. All right, welcome back to Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. Steve Sarkisian met with a small group of assembled media in Destin this morning. The first question he was asked was about the future of the college football playoff. It's the question everybody affiliated with the sport is being asked right now. More specifically, Sark was asked for his thoughts on what he thinks the playoff should look like moving forward. I kid you not, his answer was 3 minutes and 55 seconds long. We're not going to play all of it because not all of it's relevant. Sark talked about his time at USC and what the national championship format was 2+ decades ago. He talked about a bunch of things. I cut this thing down into 2 parts for the sake of brevity. So I will shut up now and let you hear from the head coach. Here's part 1 from Steve Sarkisian.
At the end of the day, we all just want to put the best teams to have an opportunity to compete for a championship. And now more than ever, the length of the season, last year we played 16 games, and that was just to get to the semifinals. We would have been 17, right, to win a championship. And so the idea, I think we've all got to wrap our brain around. I don't know if we'll ever see an undefeated national champion again. If we do, that's a really good team because it's just so difficult. And it's difficult, yes, because of the quality of the opponents you play, but it's so difficult to stay healthy that long. This idea of somebody's going to go 16-0 in college football, man, put a statue up somewhere of that team, because I just don't know if that's going to happen again. And so the idea that I think, the powers that be are trying to get it right, I think is a good, healthy discussion. And I understand not everybody's on the same page right now. Hopefully we can get to that point to where that is, that we're giving the best teams the opportunity to get into that playoff, because that's really what it is. It's a playoff. And you're rewarding teams that we've got a committee that's trying to say who are the best teams that should deserve an opportunity to compete for a national championship.
So there's part one from Sark, and the part of that sound that went the most viral this morning, quote, "I don't know if we'll ever see an undefeated national champion again," end quote. Maybe he's onto something. Again, college football is turning more into the NFL seemingly by the day. The last time we've had an undefeated Super Bowl champ in the NFL, 1972. It's the only time it's ever happened with the 72 Dolphins. Now, I get it. There's less parity in college football than there is in the NFL because, Texas and Eastern Michigan, technically they're competing for the same championship, but we know they're not on the same level. Sorry about that, EMU, catching strays today. But I do think Sark is onto something there. Like maybe at some point, and at some points, we will see undefeated national champions in college football again, but it's never going to be like what it was, where it felt like damn near every year you had a 13-0 or 14-0 team winning it all. I mean, Ohio State in just a 12-team playoff had 2 losses this past season and went on to win it all. So I think more often than not, way more often than not, the CFP champion, especially in a 16-team field, is going to have at least 1 loss, maybe even 2 or 3. I agree with Sark. I'm glad these conversations are happening, but obviously people have different opinions on what's best for the sport, and you understand why. Here's part 2 from Steve Sarkisian's answer, talking about what he would like the college football playoff to look like moving forward.
I don't know if I have all the answers. I'm excited to hear what are the talks, and where are we at. What I do know is, from our perspective, this conference is really hard. The SEC is tough. And it's tough on every level. I think that this past spring, it's 18 straight years, the SEC's had the most draft picks in the NFL draft. This year we broke the record with 79 draft picks going to the NFL draft. And so for year after year after year, the best players have been coming from the Southeastern Conference, and we love being part of it. But I surely don't want to punish our teams for playing quality opponents week in and week out, and then all of a sudden you look up and it's 2 years in a row the SEC hasn't had a team in the national championship game. That doesn't make sense all the time, right? And so we got to make sure that we've got enough opportunities to compete for national championship.
So there's Sark Park 2, and yeah, it's interesting. 2 years in a row you haven't had an SEC team playing for a national championship. Hey, Sark, maybe if you called better plays at the goal line. All right, we don't need that. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole. We're all having a good day, coming off of a holiday weekend. Everything's fine. Sorry, that wasn't necessary. But yeah, it's a real thing. It is a real thing. As much as SEC haters want to deny it, it is the best conference in the sport way more often than not. And the numbers about the NFL draft picks kind of tell the whole story, which shows you the type of talent that is in this league. So, playing a 12-game schedule in the SEC is a hell of a lot different than playing a 12-game schedule in the ACC or the Big 12, and so on and so forth. So coming up with a way that makes things, it's hard to do this fairly. There's no answer that is going to please everybody. And, every conference commissioner has to stand up for their conference. I get it. But coming up with a way to try to make as many people as happy as possible, that's kind of where college football is at right now. And the hope is, cooler heads prevail and nobody breaks off from anybody else. And we're able to keep the NCAA system, whether it's the NCAA running it or just college football becomes its own thing, and you've got a commissioner for just college football, and you let the NCAA run all of the other sports, whatever it is. I hope everybody kind of stays together because, more than an SEC fan, I am a college football fan, and it's already changed way too much for my liking, and I'm kind of terrified to see where this thing goes moving forward. I get what Sark says. He's in the SEC. He's got to defend the SEC. He's got to defend his own team, and he knows it. I mean, Texas is playing Ohio State and Georgia. There's 3 of your last 4 national champions in this sport. They're playing them both on the road this year. I don't think anybody else in the sport has to do that. That's not an easy schedule. Texas getting some assurances that, hey, we're going to keep scheduling these hard games. We need to make sure that, all right, if we do slip up in extra time compared to a team like SMU or Iowa State in a weaker conference, we're not going to get that extra loss held against us. We're playing better teams than they are. So shouldn't that mean something? I think a lot of people agree with that, but all these hypotheticals get crazy. So there's Sark basically saying he doesn't know what the exact answer is, but probably insinuating what every SEC coach would insinuate is like, we want to make sure we're protected for playing in the toughest conference in the sport. And again, I'm sure all Big Ten, if you're a Big Ten fan and you're like, the SEC is not the toughest, the Big Ten is thinking the exact same thing. And all of their coaches are thinking the exact same thing about their league right now. It's clear that those are the two best leagues in the sport, and they're looking for ways to be treated as such. All right, one more segment to go. We've got more sound from Steve Sarkisian. He was asked about conference championship games or conference championships going away with the expanded playoff. Should they go away? He was also asked about the future of the transfer portal as well. More sound from the head coach coming up next right here on Locked On Longhorns. All right, welcome back to Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. Final segment of a Tuesday show. More sound from Sark at SEC meetings in Destin. Would the SEC consider getting rid of the SEC championship game? Do you need a conference championship game if you have a 16-team playoff that has 4 automatic qualifiers from the SEC? Like, you already know both of those teams are going to make it to the playoff if you get those 4 AQs. Hell, even if you don't, you already kind of know both of those teams are making it to the playoff. So would anybody care? Do we need to have an SEC title game when this thing expands even more? Sark was kind of asked about that earlier today. Here's what he said.
I just think we've got to do a great job from a college football perspective to really look at it from every angle and to say what's best for our sport and to make sure that the quality of play is at the highest level, but also not taking it away from the student athletes because they want to win a conference championship. You know, the SEC, this is an amazing conference, and so to compete for one of those is incredible. But yet putting yourself in position to compete for a national championship is again, a tremendous goal that all of us have going into every season. But I hope we don't lose that because it does mean a lot. But again, we've got to be mindful of some of the other factors that this has. Everybody wants more teams. Everybody wants more games. TV wants more games. I get all that. But let's not lose sight of some of those things that we got into this sport for a long time ago that still mean a lot to a lot of us that are involved.
I respect Sark for saying what he said at the end there, right? Like, let's not lose sight of what we all grew to love about college football, and conferences and conference championships were a big part of that thing. And I am a conference championship fan. I still think a conference title matters. Like, I was devastated when Texas lost the SEC championship game to Georgia in December. Like, I knew Texas was still making it to the playoff. I knew Texas was going to still have a very high seed in the college football playoff. So I knew the Horns still had a chance to win the ultimate prize, the national championship, but I really wanted to win the SEC, especially in year one, right? All of the bragging rights, everybody who said, you're not good enough to come into this league and compete. The fact that Texas even got to Atlanta is a big deal, but the icing on the cake would have obviously been to have beaten Georgia, who's been like the premier program in the conference these last few years, them in Alabama, and to beat them in Atlanta, in their home state, like that would have been huge for the Longhorns. And unfortunately, it didn't happen. And I actually drove from Austin to Atlanta for that game. And let me tell you, the drive back was not very fun. So I care. And I think most fans still care. I still think a conference championship matters, right? You still get to hang a banner in your stadium or, put up a little placard on your Ring of Honor, whatever your school does. Obviously, you've got a better chance to get a first round bye in the college football playoff if you win a conference championship. That's a good thing. I know all 4 teams who had first round byes lost in their first game this past year. I don't think that's a trend that's going to continue. So that could be the difference between you being 1 through 4 and you being, 5 through whatever. Also, there are talks about a double bye potentially being in the cards for teams ranked 1 and 2 in a potential future 16-team playoff. You're not going to be getting a double bye if you lose your conference championship game. You might get a single bye. You're not going to get that double bye because you're not going to be ranked number 1 or number 2, more than likely. Probably have a Big Ten and an SEC team at the very, very top. So you could be getting a double bye. That's another benefit there too. And look, teams in other sports still try to win conference tournaments. Like Vanderbilt was already a lock to make the NCAA baseball tournament before Hoover last week. You don't think they tried to win that SEC tournament championship? Like, they look great. And hell, that got them the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament. Most of the teams in men's college basketball in the SEC, like, they kind of knew, going into Nashville that they were going to make the real tournament. Now, not everybody. Texas was one of those teams that wasn't quite sure what their status was. But like the teams that actually made deep runs to the championship game, they knew they were in. They knew they were already in the NCAA tournament, and they were going to have the shot to compete for a national title. They still cared. They still cared. They still care in other sports. I think the players still care in this sport, and I hope the SEC keeps the conference championship games around. But then again, you wonder about player safety. If you're adding more rounds to the playoffs, is it good for the players to play all those extra games, or should we get rid of conference titles? Maybe we crown just a regular season champ. I don't know how you would do that because there's going to be ties. Do you have co-champions? Do you have just a bunch of crazy tiebreaker rules for the two teams if they're not head-to-head, or if they don't play a head-to-head game that season? There's a lot of rabbit holes that you potentially go down and a lot of questions if you just remove conference championship games altogether. I think the coaches still care. I think the players still care. I think the fans care. Obviously, for the fans, it sucks because that's more expensive. Now you got to go to a conference title game and then more college football playoff games. Look at Longhorn fans. Had to go to Atlanta for the SEC title game. Had to buy tickets for the home game against Clemson in round 1 of the CFP. Had to go back to Atlanta for the Peach Bowl. Had to go to Dallas for the Cotton Bowl. I mean, it's insane. Feels like fans are being asked for more and given less these days. So there's a lot of back and forth, but I don't know. Maybe it's just me being a college football purist / traditionalist. I like the conference championship games. I really want to see Texas win an SEC title too before they take these things away. But I think the majority of fans agree with me on wanting to keep the conference title games. Do they mean as much in the grand scheme? I guess not, because you're going to make the playoff either way as long as you make it to that game. But SEC championship, that should mean something. To me, that means a lot. It should mean at least something. So I hope those stick around. All right, we're out of time today. We'll have more sound from Steve Sarkisian on tomorrow's show. I promise. Sark's thoughts on the future of the transfer portal. Couple of thoughts on the current state of the Longhorns as well. We will preview Texas softball in the Women's College World Series. They actually start play at 11 o'clock on Thursday. Today's Tuesday. I'm getting my days mixed up here. So we'll do the preview for Thursday's game tomorrow. Talk more Texas baseball as well. Never a dull moment on the 40 acres. But yeah, there's some sound from Sark today talking about the college football playoff, talking about the SEC championship game and just conference championship games as a whole. Obviously, there's a heck of a lot going on with college sports, and some of the decisions that are made this week and over these next few months are going to have massive impacts on the next few years and decades of college football. All right. Thank y'all for watching. If you made it this far, number 1, thank you. Number 2, please like, please rate 5 stars, please share, please subscribe, please leave a comment below if you're watching on YouTube. And for your next listen, make sure you check out the Locked On Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors and entries and news. He's also talking college football recruiting all of the time on that channel. So check that out on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Just search Locked On the Portal. Again, more from SEC meetings, plenty more Longhorn baseball and softball talk coming up the rest of the week. But that's going to do it for today's show. Until next time, horns up, mics off. We'll see y'all soon. This is Locked On Longhorns.